Thank you.
What is the history of Mechanical? What's the meaning behind your name?
So the reason that I chose Mechanical as my name basically is that I went through this rebranding about a year and a half ago now. And the way I produce tracks is very methodical. Like I'll start with either a vocal sample or a melody sample and then build the track around that. So it's a very methodical and mechanical process to how I create these tracks. So I just kind of changed up some of the letters, and that's how this alias was born. I performed under a different alias before, but that got to be an issue because it was hard for people to pronounce both stateside and internationally. So that, it led to some pretty creative pronunciations.
I'm trying to pronounce it in Enceladus.
You're close. You're close. We'll just leave it at that.
So, how do you prepare for a set, and what gets you most amped during a performance?
Seeing something that I produce and seeing something I created that everyone's going nuts over, that's what definitely leads to the biggest reaction from me. As to how I prepare my sets, I honestly don't. I'll look at the lineup and make sure I have tracks that aren't from other artists on the lineup, and then I'll read the crowd as the time goes on, as the set goes on, to kind of adjust and tweak it to what they want to hear. I usually have like a basic framework when I go in. So for this gig, especially, I decided that I was going to do subground, which is kind of hard house at 130, 132 BPM. Then I was going to move into early hardstyle, which is like 140, and then finally hardstyle at 150.
So you've gotten to play DEF CON, you played Tomorrow World, now you just played Mysteryland.
Yeah.
So how have these experiences been? And do you prefer like the festival crowds or like a small club atmosphere?
Seeing as I came up and I kind of cut my teeth on the festival scene, I definitely like the festival crowds, but there is something to be said about a club audience that you really don't get here at a festival. There's not necessarily a disconnect from the audience, but there's more a very, it's like you're playing very formally. Like in a club, I guess, you can kind of dick around, I guess, and play things that you wouldn't normally because, it's a club scene, and it definitely, you have more creativity and more flexibility there.
So, what are the top 5 songs that you listen to daily?
Top 5 songs, I like anything that's different from what everyone else is performing. So, I've been on a recent Bose Van de Beats kick. I've also been listening to some psytrance stuff. Just kind of, not necessarily sourcing ideas, but just something I enjoy listening to. 4B makes it in the mix too. And, yeah. A lot of tracks by 4B, actually.
So, hardstyle is one of the genres that involve an MC.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do you feel about the MC presence during the set?
It kind of adds a complement to the DJ set, where you can only do so much with your music. The MC's there to get it the rest of the way and get the crowd amped up and hyped up. That's my takeaway. Jeff.
So, who or what has been your main inspiration or motivation?
I'd have to say DJ Kuhn, mainly because he was the primary driving force behind me getting into production of hardstyle. He did his video series of The Challenge back in 2011, and that's what kind of motivated me. It gave me insight into what the production process is, collaboration process, and I was thinking, I can do this. So I started producing in hardstyle in 2011, and by 2013, the rest is history.
So if you could collab with anyone, who would it be?
I could say like all the cheesy, like the cliched ones, Dead Mouse or Armin van Buuren, but I would love to see what the Prodigy would do with a hardstyle sound. I'd love to see what would happen if like someone who produces, let's say, dubstep, Skrillex, for example. He'd be awesome to see how his sound and hardstyle sound would kind of mush together. There's obviously been multiple bootlegs. But to actually have him create an original hardstyle track would be kind of cool to see.
Right. Now, speaking of bootlegs, you have many bootlegs and remixes. Do you have a favorite one?
My favorite one right now is actually one I just premiered today. It's an edit I did of Another You that Armin van Buuren and Mr. Probst did, and it was actually an edit off the Headhunters remix that he created. So I premiered that today, and so far that's been the one that I like the most.
Now, do you prefer to make originals or remixes or bootlegs?
Usually what happens is that I'll try out new production techniques on bootlegs and remixes, and then I'll kind of bring that all together and create original tracks. I do like the creativity that goes behind original tracks, but sometimes if you're just feeling lazy or not that creative, you're just like, I'll just take this track and see what I can do and throw a hard kick on it and see what happens.
Now, what are you currently working on?
Right now, I'm actually working on a side project that shall remain unnamed because it's not necessarily hardstyle. It's basically an alias on which a bunch of people are coming together and producing different styles. So we've done stuff from D&B, Tropical House, some other, we did a twerk track, which is really fun to do, surprisingly enough. I don't know why I kind of geeked out on the drum programming for that track, but it was a lot of fun to do. And that's what I've been kind of putting half my energy into. The other half is definitely creating more original hardstyle tracks and also getting them released. So it's kind of taking that next step.
So if you weren't making hardstyle, what would you be making?
Oh, God. I can't really decide on one genre, mainly because it depends on what I'm in the mood to make. So maybe I'll make a twerk track, maybe I'll make a hip-hop track. Just trying to cut my teeth and test things out and test my production styles in other genres. I would definitely say that one genre I would avoid making, mainly because my roommate made it and he kind of bored the hell out of me for it, is Deep House and Future House. I don't know, I don't dislike it, but it's a little easy to make. I just want to kind of be challenged, I guess.
Nothing wrong with a challenge.
Yeah.
So how do you view the hardstyle scene in the US? And do you ever think hardstyle will make it to mainstream radio?
I think the direction it's taking now, especially in Europe, it's definitely kind of pandering towards making more of an appeal in the US. As for if it'll hit mainstream radio, not for a while. That's what I can think. It's still going to be one of those side stage scenes, but it definitely is growing. And if we got a hardstyle act on a main stage, which we have actually, I know the Tweakers are playing at Paradiso this year. Coon's playing at multiple festivals all over the U.S. and they're big festivals from that usually bring in giant crowds. So it's definitely helping the scene here. It's a growing scene.
So, besides the alias, are you working on anything for the future, like an album or a tour?
Just kind of developing my sound right now and putting out EPs and singles mostly. Some of the release stuff is in the works as we speak.
Released this year?
Yeah, hopefully later this year. I've actually got 2 releases coming out in July. Actually 2 tracks that have been kind of sitting around. One I produced about 2 years ago that finally is seeing a release.
Both originals?
Yeah, they're both originals. And one I produced earlier this year, which is kind of a more freestyle track, so it combines hardstyle, house, like big room house kind of, and trap music and stuff like that. Out on July 1st on Hard Dance Nation.
So, you are young, you're 20. How do you feel about playing on historical Woodstock lands?
This is the second time I've done it, and I've finally come to terms with it, like the significance of that this is the first big festival that's come to these grounds since Woodstock 1969. Last year I played, and I really couldn't comprehend it. It was still kind of a surreal experience. This year, like I said, it definitely kind of hit home, and I'm like, wow, this is history in the making right now. So it's right. There's a lot riding on it. There's a lot, you have to prove that it's a good festival, that people will come. But doing that, it's a lot of fun to take up that challenge, take up the responsibility of making sure that this is a festival to remember.
And lastly, if you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Any superpower? Probably the power of flight. I'm not gonna lie. Just because it'd be really cool to just skip the 4-hour car ride that I took to get here and fly home in like 30 minutes.
So many DJs, they want flight, teleportation. I feel bad for you guys. You gotta travel so much.
Airports, you either love them or you hate them. I've been in some pretty janky airports.